And welcome everyone to the opening of the fall 2021 virtual Allotrope Connect meeting. Again, very excited to be with everyone. I'm sure a little bit in the subtext, a little bit disappointed that we weren't able to do this in person. This time last year, we certainly hoped that this was going to be an in-person event, but world events obviously have conspired that we couldn't be together. But hopefully, as we have been doing over the last year and a half, we'll make use of the virtual format and really have a great meeting nevertheless. So welcome. I thought before we jumped actually into the agenda and some of the general framing comments that I had on behalf of the Allotrope Executive Committee to welcome you to the fall meeting, I thought maybe it would be a good time with so many things that have been going on this year that we will be talking about today at length throughout the agenda. I will review for you in a few minutes. It's always good occasionally to take a step back and to think about the problems that we're solving and just remind ourselves what the target is, what true north is for us. And so I pulled some information publicly available for the pharmaceutical industry. Many of these points I think will resonate as well in the life sciences in general, but thought the pharma examples were a pretty good encapsulation of what current state is and what the problem statement really is. And just reviewing some of the details on the left-hand side panel, if you look at pharma by the numbers, the spend in R&D based on this 2018 report is significant and ever increasing, as you can see in the graphic to the right. And what was really telling for me when I saw this report is that the percent of the total revenue that's spent on R&D in the pharma industry is significant at 17%. By comparison to some of our other innovators that are out there, Apple as an example, they managed to innovate by only spending 3%. Obviously, very, very different business, different challenges. But again, it shows the challenges that we have in the life sciences and how expensive it is to innovate. Building on that, the cost of developing a new drug, a few years dated, but still pretty representative, is on order an average of about $3 billion. And it yields only in the neighborhood of 6 drugs per decade, so roughly a drug every 2 years on average across the industry. If you look at the global market for trying to discover new targets and ultimately new compounds, by 2025, this is viewed to be a $71 billion business. So it's not for lack of trying. We're putting significant effort into finding medicines that will impact the lives of patients, but it's a daunting task. Specifically within this, using intelligent discovery techniques, which we'll talk about in the next few slides, in silico methods and such, that market is growing rapidly as well and will continue to grow and approach $4 billion, the estimate is by 2027. Unfortunately, if you switch again to the right-hand panel, you see that the trends aren't favorable in terms of the costs of getting a new drug approved over the decades and the probability of moving between the various phases that you're all well familiar with to ultimately get to the goal of approving a drug. So this obviously is a very poignant for those of us in pharma case for change and those of us who work with pharma on a regular basis. What I also thought was interesting pulling out of some of these references is that the market for the digital market is still relatively small, all in all, considering these challenges that face us and the general statement, which you can see some specific call outs in the box in the lower right-hand corner, that there's a very broadly accepted problem statement that scientists spend far too much time wrangling their data and far too much corresponding budget. So it's a huge problem, and hopefully what convince you in the next few slides and really with the ongoing dialogue during the Connect meeting is this is an area where we really just need to make more and more investment to start putting a dent in the problem statement above. So ultimately, again, in the spirit of trying to remind us what true north is, where we'd like to be. And again, using a pharma example, increasingly, if you look at the left-hand side of the slide, our world is getting more and more complex. Executing the scientific method becomes more and more challenging, and increasingly employs data from more and more disparate disciplines and domains. And so the science is getting more and more translational. We're incorporating in silico techniques, both to help us in the laboratory and with our in vitro and in vivo studies. However, this general paradigm to try to address the problem of how do we find transformative change in R&D is certainly shining a spotlight on the importance of data. Because if we're going to drive the kind of game-changing analytics, modeling, and data science that's really going to allow us to achieve unprecedented levels of insights from our data, we're really going to have to take care of the data that feeds those models. And one other thought in terms of True North, it's also in terms of R&D productivity, it's really more about trying to make informed and targeted decisions on what the best course of experimentation is, leveraging those insights from the virtual world, and less of sort of standardized formulaic experimentation that's costly and often doesn't necessarily get us the right data to make the decisions that we need to make. So these are some of the macro trends. Certainly the approaches, the industry has been working hard in the data storage landscape. Many methods have varied over the past several years. You can see moving away from data silos to these various other means of storing our information and making it more accessible for our analyses. However, certainly I'd be remiss as chair of Allotrope if I didn't remind us all, but the principle that we all learned in our various educational trainings along the years is still true. Garbage in, unfortunately, always yields garbage out. So while we make these advances in how we store our data and to make it accessible, we really have to pay attention to the data quality. It must be reliable, complete, and consistent. Otherwise, we are leaving ourselves a challenge down the road when we are trying to consume that data and use it to draw these insights. Often trying to fill in gaps in what was recorded at the time of capture when the information was known most reliably. So also introducing some scientific reproducibility challenges. So certainly, as a foundation, we are committed at Allotrope to trying to solve the data quality problem as much as possible at the point of capture when the information is fresh and known best. So again, a reminder of current state. We have certainly made some progress, but we still largely live in an application-centric environment. Software is the power that's at our fingertips is really awesome, but it's still designed mostly for specific workflows, not the broad data flows that go across the steps that you see that all of us who are familiar with laboratory work are quite familiar with, from designing all the way through an experiment to reporting out the results from it. Unfortunately, still the applications are independent in terms of the schema they use, the terminology and vocabularies used within, and the interfaces that connect the various pieces together. As alluded to in the prior slide, all of this leading towards data consumption, data scientific reproducibility challenges at the end of the day, when we increasingly try to combine more and more disparate information sources together to really get that translational view of science across all the experiments that we're running. What you will see, I think, during the agenda today is definitely a definite progress to link together applications, which is certainly heartening, and I'm very excited to share with you some of those presentations during the course of the 3 sessions that we have. So the movement really is towards a more data-centric environment, and what I've borrowed here is the Data-Centric Manifesto, which you can find online, and hopefully the principles resonate with all, that the data are the key asset of any of our organization. It's really the intellectual property, the learnings, the taking data and turning it into knowledge and information is really any scientific enterprise. It's at the heart of the enterprise and what survives well beyond the tools that were used to acquire the data. The data should be self-describing. They shouldn't rely on the application, and expressed in as open and non-proprietary format as possible to permit sharing and easy exchange and lower those barriers. Where possible, the security of the data should be managed at a data layer and not manage it individually at applications, which certainly is not cost effective to do, but also it can restrict access to data and sharing across applications if the security in individual applications doesn't permit broader sharing. So it's easier to do it at a data layer. And finally, I think this is, for me, it was really the bullet that takes it all home is there's great software out there. The applications should visit the data in the appropriate format that it is, in context that it is sitting in the data layer, do the magic that it does, and then report it back to the data layer to continue that value chain and sharing across other applications. So that's, as depicted on the right-hand side, that's a bit of a hill to climb. So how do we get to that goal of data centricity? The principles that we certainly espouse to, and hopefully we'll show you a bunch of progress that we're making towards this in these sessions over the next week or so, is the FAIR principles, making our data findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable as the goal. And as I think all of us who work in the area of data standards know, those are completely appropriate principles, but they don't necessarily tell you how to get there. And we think data standards help solve the problem of charting a course towards fair data and ultimately a data-centric environment. So for those who on the call today may be new to Allotrope, or again, those who've been with us for a while, we thought in the last little bits of my comments, we would take the Allotrope Foundation and share the executive committee's view of the Allotrope Foundation just in a simple slide, beginning in the middle with the community, because first and foremost, every time we talk about the priorities of the community and the success of the community, it always comes, and foundation as a whole, it always comes back to the central tenet that the biggest success story of Allotrope is we are a community that's been together for a number of years. Very active, approximately 60 organizations that are part of Allotrope, and we collaborate on a regular basis to create and to apply Allotrope technology. And what you'll see in the agenda today is our next offering that really helps us hopefully collaborate and drive adoption even further. Moving to the left-hand side, it's a community, again, that has, as indicated, has created some powerful technology. Standardized ontologies known as Allotrope Foundation ontologies that are publicly available and can be found on some of the popular ontology management sites that are out there in the industry. And we encourage folks to, even if you're not using the full Allotrope technology stack in your applications, to consider using the Allotrope ontologies. That's why they're public. Standardized data structures, or Allotrope data models, ADM, that you'll also hear about, that help take those ontologies and put them into context and structure the data that we're actually, as we are actually representing the various domains of interest to us, the data models tell us how to use those ontologies. All this is packaged in a binary data format in a container with APIs that help you consistently use the technology. And we will continue to use and support this technology now and in the future. And you're going to hear several great presentations over the week that talk about applications of our current AFO, ADM, ADF toolkit. But what you're also going to hear about this week, we've been talking really for the better part of the last year in getting to the community and getting feedback on the power of our current products, but also the complexity that we really needed simpler entries into data standardization because it is a journey. And so in response to that, as we talked about in the spring, we chartered a project to create a new product, which we're calling the Allotrope Simple model, which is a JSON schema and also some utilities to map terms, which our technical director, product owner, Amnon Pshek, will tell you more about today, and we'll also tell you more about it later in the agenda, later on next week. So really excited about that offer, to tell you more about their offering. I won't tell you too much about it now because I don't want to steal any of Amnon's thunder, but you'll be hearing about that shortly. And we think that really rounds out the Allotrope toolkit. And then finally, progressing to the right-hand side of the slide, we've been working really hard with the product team that's been in place now for a better part of 2 years to really take our operations and make them robust. A governance process, which is depicted by the small cartoon insert, is robust. And at the end of the third quarter delivery that's coming up, we will have approximately 50 domain data models that allow you to structure your data with consistent context and structure, and start using them immediately. And all those data models will also have corresponding Allotrope simple models. So depending on where you want to start your or continue your Allotrope journey, you'll have that full toolkit supporting those models at your fingertips. And increasing over the last year or two, we've also increased the amount of automation and QA tools, and you'll see next year we will continue those efforts as well to both improve the quality of the Allotrope offerings and also to help us bring new domains to you as quickly as possible. So this is Allotrope in a slide. Hopefully all of those who are new to the community, this is helpful, and those who have been part of this, we can't thank you enough for helping us to get to this point over the last several years. So thank you very much. This is our collective accomplishment. The community, again, just flashing to, the slide's always impressive to me, how many folks are contributing to the Allotrope community and what we're trying to do as a pre-competitive collaboration. So thank you very much. And I just wanted to call out in the items here with the red circle, sorry, there's lots of colors, but 3 new members of the community since the last time we spoke in an Allotrope Connect in the spring. Dow has joined us, and also IFPEN and Alicia Ray Test are also part of the Allotrope community now. So welcome, please reach out to them and certainly provide contact information, make them feel welcome, and help them find where they can contribute to the community as quickly as possible. So welcome. So now just last comments, and then we'll switch over to the specific presentations. I just wanted to take you through very quickly the agenda for today and the next 2 sessions. Today is really an overview of the Allotrope strategy and vision. After this, these quick introductory comments and welcome, our modeling group will actually take you through some of those operations that I described and let you know how we've developed approximately 50 models in the last couple of years and how we're constantly improving the coverage, but also the operations every quarter. Next, our product team will describe for you the Allotrope simple models. You know, you've heard about them, a lot about them. We've been working on them all year. Well, they're almost here, and we're going to get an exciting update on the ASM today. Our next session, hopefully folks will be able to be with us on September 15th, is really starting to talk about that strategy and vision in action, so implementations. We'll hear, as we've heard in past sessions, we'll hear about some progress that the Allotrope Pistoia collaboration has resulted in towards a universal method database, and where the Pistoia effort is specifically presentation, which we always love to see in Allotrope across multiple organizations working together, because that's really what the power of Allotrope is. A solution to look at data management of large data sets from our friends at Paradigm 4. So we'll hear about the next installment in their journey. The next presentation will be from Agilent, talking about their commercial releases, next exciting release from Agilent, which for their Open Lab suite that incorporates more and more of the complex LCUV data model that we developed as a community a few years ago. Well, they've implemented more and more of it now, and I think you'll be excited to see how complete their solution is. and then finally, a partnership between Mestrolab and Zontal to use Allotrope technology to help that deep integration between MNOVA and the Zontal space products. And then finally, the last day, we'll have a little bit more of a technical bent to it. So if those organizations, folks who are here today, certainly let your technical folks know that that is the case on the last day. And thinking about the foundation and thinking about perhaps next innovations that we can make. So the first will be the next installment of the concept of self-reporting data assets from our colleagues at BYU. Next, we'll look at some thought experiments in how else we could represent our linked data models using JSON-LD as a thought experiment, perhaps for future actions. Use of Python package from the HDF group to really start consuming the data, which I think after you see some of the presentations on ASM, I think you'll understand how powerful this can be quickly. And then finally, today will just be an overview of the ASM for those who really want to roll up their sleeves and dive a little deeper into the schema, into validation and some hands-on demos. Our product team will take you through those details on the last session of the Allotrope Connect. So just as a final thought, before I hand it over to the next speaker, hopefully it convinced you from this, there are very real problem statements, real opportunities before us that we as members of the life sciences, and specifically those within pharma, have a strong responsibility to address, to really address the goals that many of us entered into these various industries, is to impact the lives of people. And so hopefully I've also convinced you that data standards are part of the solution. And generally speaking, starting from the right-hand side of the slide, data standardization is a journey. Everyone is not starting from the same place, or everyone's not necessarily trying to get to the same place. We're all going to have our respective journeys, and we'll move along those journeys at the paces that make sense to our organizations. This is a very, very complex problem. Generally speaking, if the next step goals for your organization are less complex, you'll probably be looking for less complex solutions. And correspondingly, if you've done some of that already and have more complex aspirations of interrogating your data because you've built some of those foundations, you'll perhaps be looking for more enriched solutions. And hopefully what you will see over the course of this Connect is the Allotrope toolkit now really does have pieces that allow the simplest implementations of data standards up to those more enriched semantic representations of data for those more complex problem statements that you might want to be tackling as an organization. And so what I would just ask you to consider, moving to the left-hand side of the slide, is as you think about your particular situation, your use case, your problem statement that's motivating your organization right now, what business value you're targeting for the foreseeable future, what success criteria you've established, and perhaps within your organization, what architectural principles you're implementing, or engineering principles, or the data strategy that maybe you're implementing in your company, or what sort of general patterns that you want to use to consume data for consistency for your scientists. As you consider all these sort of factors in choosing data standards, hopefully you'll see that the Allotrope standard is now, I believe it was very powerful before, but now it's even more versatile. And so hopefully you'll be able to find something in the Allotrope framework toolkit that will allow you, regardless of where you are in your journey and what the answer to some of these questions in the blue ovals are, you'll find something that allows you to move from where you are to the next step in your journey. And that's really what our goal is. And as I leave you, with this, consider the question in the bottom right-hand corner during the course of the fall Allotrope Connect: how can Allotrope's toolkit enable your data standardization journey? I ask you to think about these things, and please actively reach out to us as a member of the community or as a prospective new member of the community, and let's have a dialogue about it, and let's help each other find the answers to those questions. So with that, I will thank you. I will welcome you to the virtual conference,